Last week, you guys saw me take apart the front end of my 1-ton swap Toyota Tacoma. We fixed the front air locker, we cleaned up all the heims, we painted everything, and as promised, this week, we are working on the rear. For rear lock, we have the factory Ford Elocker that comes in these Super Duty axles, and it's also not working. So we're gonna have to pull the diff cover off and see if maybe the harness got destroyed by the ring and pinion, is my best guess. But not only are we fixing the E-locker on the rear, we have to fix the anti-wrap bar. This guy ripped off the truck, I don't know, 6 months after building it approximately, and it took a chunk out of the factory crossmember with it, so we're gonna have to re-engineer some sort of frame side mount for it. And last, if we have time for it, there is one more upgrade I'd like to do to the rear of this thing, and it involves replacing these smashed taillights with taillights that do not fit. Stay tuned. Luckily with the Sterling 10.5, unlike the front axle, you don't actually have to jack up the truck, pull the tires off, and pull a bunch of stuff apart just to pull out the center of the diff. These axle shafts are awesome, and they just pull straight out of the housing, just like that. Now with those axle shafts out, I can come in here, pull the cover off, drain the gear oil, and try to figure out what the heck is even going on. It's kind of nice because last time I was in here and I actually installed the E-locker, I was still recovering from having a very broken thumb. So it should be a little bit easier to line everything up this time around. Time to drop the gear oil. Good news is there wasn't much for water in the rear diff, unlike the front. I've also serviced this rear axle by installing that E-locker since the initial build, where the front never got touched, and those wires look fine. Don't worry, these pinion marks were already on this E-locker center when I put it in. These aren't new, and they're not from my diff not being set up correctly. I guess I'll do what I should have done right off the hop and just test the E-locker by giving it power at this plug. Oh, did you see that? It's locked now. I unplugged it from in here, replugged it in, it didn't lock, and then wiggled the wires and it locked. So even though it's working just fine now, I fixed it by just wiggling the wires and now it's reliable. Obviously I can't trust just wiggling the wires because out on the trail I'm not going to pull the diff cover and wiggle the wires and get the locker working again. So I think I am going to pull the carrier out of this thing, but see how I got a plug here and a plug up here? I think I'm going to eliminate this one. I just have two wires that come straight out and up to here, and just have one less connection in here, and that way I can get rid of all this slack that's also inside this diff and has potential to catch on the ring or the bolts on the back here. So let's just pull the carrier out. Boy, I can't wait to have this Tacoma done and back on the trails. And as you guys know, we will not be back on the trails without the sponsor of today's video, Onyx Off-Road. Onyx Off-Road is a must-have app for anyone who's into the outdoors, whether it's wheeling, overlanding, or maybe you just like to cruise bush roads. It's got over 500,000 miles of trails mapped throughout the USA and Canada. And guess what? You don't even need service to use it when you're way out in those remote locations. You can download all your maps in advance and know exactly exactly where you're going. Plus, it's got awesome features like Go and Track, which will map your trail as you go so you can find it in the future or use it to get home. If you guys want to get Onyx for yourself, make sure you use my link in the description down below and use coupon code Dirt.Garage to save yourself 20% on their elite membership. Anyways, let's get this Tacoma finished so we can get back on the trails. So with the carrier out and the plug removed from the Elocker, we are left with these two little wires right here. I'm going to solder this 2-wire right to these guys, and then we'll run this guy outside of the diff housing. We got the new wire soldered and run, and before we go to install this back in a truck, I figured we'd use the jumper pack and test it out. Hey! That is a working locker. So now that me and Phoenix have the Elocker confirmed working and ready to drop back into the differential housing, we're gonna do the same thing we did up front. We're gonna grab a wire brush on my drill, knock off all the big flakes of rust we can, and then give the diff a paint job. Okay, so we got the diff all buttoned up here. I got the cover back on, the axle shafts back in, and with the floor jack underneath, you can see as I spin the tire, the locker isn't on. That tire is pretty well staying put. But if I go on the cab and hit the locker button, and now spin it, we're locked! And backwards. This truck hasn't had working lockers in what feels like ages, so it's really nice to see both tires spinning. So we got front and we got rear lock working. And now it should be unlocked. And it is. Well, it is day 2 this video working on the Tacoma, and today we're gonna rip the bed off because it'll be way easier to get at the anti-wrap mounts and stuff that I need to modify or build, and because the other modification that requires swapping out the taillight kind of involves taking the box sides off. So really, the bed needs to come off regardless. I broke the T55 bit before it stripped out that corner. That's honestly impressive. I would have expected this to have stripped and got destroyed long before it killed a bit. Also, holy cow, are these back ones stuck. Because the bed sides have to be removed anyways, I think I might as well remove the bed sides on the truck and make this whole setup a little bit lighter before I try to pull it all off by myself. And as far as I can tell, the bed sides come off pretty easily. A couple of bolts here, bolt there, some bolts in here, and this support. Maybe another support back here, but I don't know. Now that we got the box off, the next thing I want to work on fixing is reinstalling the anti-wrap. I backed the truck up onto these ramps to lift up the rear a bit more, just so that I got more room underneath to work on it. And the first thing we're going to do is remove the exhaust because it occupies the same space that the anti-wrap needs to go into. Alright, now we can crawl underneath and I can show you guys what exactly we're working with. This is what the anti-wrap used to be attached to. In fact, this is the piece of cross member that it took with it. So we gotta fix this whole situation. I think my plan is to just put a piece of tube in place just like this. Put a plate here, box in that tube, and then on the other side over here, do the exact same thing. Have a plate that comes down and grabs that tube and weld it all solid. But first, we gotta clean all this up so that we can weld. Alright, so we are making moves down here. So we got this plate here, which will get welded all the way across the bottom, across the top, and around the tube to just kind of brace this side of the tube. And on this side, we've got that bracket right there, which will get welded on the top, around the bottom, and all the way around that tube. Then we can work on building the actual anti-wrap mounts off of this piece of tube. We have recreated this guy, which will get welded to this guy. Next order of business, throw the panhard bar in here and kind of figure it out. Honestly, ever since this anti-wrap broke off, it has been a job I have been not looking forward to doing. But after a day of rolling around in the dirt, we got her dialed. So we got the rear end here pretty well all buttoned up. The panhard bar is reinstalled, the exhaust is reinstalled, the locker works, and it's pretty well good to go. Unfortunately, we're still waiting for parts to put the box back together, but in the meantime, while I'm working on a bunch of stuff that has been bugging me for years and been meaning to fix, there is one thing that I'd like to install in the front of this Tacoma, and that is a camera. It's no secret that this Tacoma is huge. The second generation Tacoma is a huge platform. It's practically a full-size truck, and with the fiberglass and the lift and everything, sometimes coming over hills or looking over obstacles, it's really hard to see over your hood. So I'm going to install a camera. I don't quite know where yet, probably somewhere on the grill like this, but I'm going to pull the grill off because I want it more recessed than that because it sticks out and is quite obvious. So yeah, I'm going to pull the grill off, figure out how to mount this, and then I'll show you guys how I'm going to wire it. So I'm gonna try to get this camera mounted on the inside of here. Flush-ish with the front. It doesn't fit, but it almost wants to. I think that'll work. Notched just this rib in here, and now the camera fits right in there, and it'll sit something like that. To mount it, I think I'm just going to use hot glue. I could JB weld it, but I think that would make it a little too permanent, just in case like the camera cacks out or I change my mind or something. We'll just fill up this void in the back with hot glue it on the bottom, and I think it'll stay there. Of course, the glue gun's dead and has to charge, so in the meantime, let's talk about wiring. This Tacoma does have a factory reverse camera, and it is located up here in the rear view mirror. But something else this Tacoma has is this fancy aftermarket head unit that happens not to be utilizing its backup camera functions because I never felt a need to move the camera from up here down to there. So my idea is to just wire the camera into the head unit, and to turn it on, I'm just going to use this camera button on my aux beam. It's pretty straightforward. The backup camera came with this guy that plugs into the back of the stereo, and integrated with this plug is this red wire. And this red wire just tells the head unit when to display the camera. So we plug this guy in here, and then this red wire gets wired to this guy that just says back. I ran that wire from the stereo through the firewall over here to the back of the camera. I then tied the power and ground to my aux beam panel so that I can turn the camera on demand with my switch panel in the cab. Now that we got her glued in and the wiring all done, let's go inside the cab and give it a test. Key on. Now, if I go up here and hit the camera button, hey, look at that. We got a front mounted camera. So if we turn it off, back to our Android Auto, on. Oh, that's perfect. Unfortunately, I just got word that the parts I'm waiting for to put the bed back together aren't gonna be here till Saturday. So I might as well tell you what we're doing to finish off this video. Well, you know how this truck is actually a second generation Tacoma, and the front clip is all third gen. We got fiberglass coming to convert the bed to a third gen as well. So from the outside, this truck will look all third gen. Anyways, guys, that's about all we got time for in this week's episode of Dirt Garage. If you could do me a huge favor, hit that thumbs up button, and hey, consider subscribing. We upload weekly Toyota, building, wheeling, and off-road content. Anyways, we'll catch you next week. Peace.